Hello. So this is the hOEP project. Hours equals price. Oh God, that sounds so cheesy. Um, I'm back at the Socialist Party of Great Britain website, um, and I just stumbled across an old PM private message uh, for the archives. That's really interesting. It amazes me how much I repeat myself. I wrote this back in 23/09/2017, and just the other day I was like saying the same thing and thinking I'd figured it out for the first time. But really, a lot of these ideas have been percolating over and over again, and most of what I do um, has been prototyped here at worldsocialism.org. So I use this place as a testing site for ideas and concepts because the people here don't generally go viral. Um, this is a slow board where it's hard to spread information easily. And I like that because I might have a bad idea or an idea I don't really want the wrong people to hear about yet. And it gives me a sort of freedom to explore ideas in ways that I couldn't otherwise. Um, so this is participant Steve San Francisco. That's my name. Steve San Francisco, user experience something designer. Anyways, I sent a message to him. I'm not sure what problem the mods have with me, but I thought I'd reply by PM if you don't mind, to avoid you raising their ire. Marcos, who got upset with me for PM, oh yeah, Marcos got upset with me for PMing him, so I guess he doesn't approve of PM, but if it's okay with you, we can talk by PM, and it's fine for me. You wrote, Steve San Francisco, concerning post number 340. It's an interesting system you have, Steve, but it's predicated on what I've been saying to a certain extent. The value, price, and wage determinations are founded on conceptual perception, i.e., on what people in general believe is a valid means of exchange and a valid form of equivalence for things and between things, which means theoretically that people could be convinced to change exchange systems. Both Teresa and Jenny have agreed to the hOEP.coin system and or must be indoctrinated to the hOEP coin system for it to work, either by force and or propaganda. It's a little bit like Bitcoin, if I'm correct, and its attempt to generate hype for an alternative current means of exchange. However, isn't this what capitalism is doing, trying to convince us to what we are equitable value, prices, and ranges? Trying to convince us as to what are equitable values, prices, and wages. And ultimately, capitalists would seek to eliminate any means of exchange that takes power away from its highly controlled central banks, as it kind of did with Bitcoin. My reply: yes, thank you for acknowledging that. It's definitely predicated on what you are saying to a large extent, but this isn't some theory or abstract concept for me. This is real and going to enter the capitalist market soon and fast, and quickly capture 50% of GDP based on my best economic models and estimates. It will create a phase change in the capitalist economy that immediately alters the form and methods of profit-seeking behavior in the marketplace. But I would quibble on a few things that seem not exactly as you describe in my more atomized model of the behavioral economics involved. So, for instance, it doesn't matter what people as a group accept as an exchange system, because people can disagree and use different exchange systems. Some people use food stamps, and some people use cash only, and some people buy everything on credit. And some people use coupons in combination with money. So people are convinced routinely and individually, in actuality, to accept new forms of exchange in a capitalist society, and there is no consensus or grand capitalist bureaucracy that determines the means or mode of exchange in this particular case. This works in the marketplace similar to a manufacturer's coupon, and can be implemented with existing coupons, processing software, and hardware and conceptions. So to consumers, it can be made to look and feel and act like just another coupon, which consumers already accept and use routinely and legally. You're right about both Teresa and Jenny have to agree to the hOEP system, but indoctrination isn't really the way that happens. The poor person agrees because it saves the poor person money, no indoctrination required. The rich person agrees if and when it's better than the opportunity cost of not agreeing. So if it's a small town and only one seller and a monopoly market or oligopoly market, then that sort of determines whether the rich person will shop around, which takes time and effort, which is money. So in this case, the rich person agrees because it's cheaper to pay the hOEP price of 1 hour of her time than it is to walk out and spend an hour seeking out and finding another hairdresser who will charge less. In the economic simulations, it turns out this is only really adopted by sellers when the seller has a high profit margin relative to the marginal cost of production. So in the few perfectly efficient market for commodities like beans or corn bought and sold in bulk, this won't be used and offers neither the seller nor the buyer any economic profit advantage. The adoption of this in the marketplace will be fractal patterned, not all or nothing patterned. Bitcoin is based on capital currency and is fungible and bankable. You can store value in it. hOEP.coin is not fungible and not bankable. It can't be saved or stored or collected and only exists as a hypothetical currency for converting dollar prices. So those are some very fundamental differences between hOEP.coin and Bitcoin from in any economic political model. Bitcoin's main advantage over state currency is that it can't be easily manipulated by states. Also, Bitcoin is easier to move around and work with logistically with computers technology than state money and somewhat free from local state laws about money usage and also somewhat more anonymous than some forms of money like checks. hOEP.coin doesn't actually need any sort of buzz or anything like that. It's proved mathematically to make some sellers more profit, and at current levels of inequality, we expect it to make the best case seller 210% profit with no other changes to business operations or expenses. We don't need to indoctrinate sellers to prefer selling with a way that makes them 210% more profit, and the greed will already do that quite quickly. All we need to do is start mass adoption by sellers is light a spark and show them how it works and how it will make them money and make it easy for them. I have tested the spark in controlled environments and tested the methods, and they work fine. Customers and sellers all follow the profit-seeking behavior in a capitalist market, and that's all that required for this to lead into a chain reaction of business and customer adoption that transforms the economy quite quickly. But don't share this too quickly or indiscriminately. You are mostly right that capitalists will seek to eliminate this as a threat to their superiority. I've been game scenario studying how they might try to do that, and it looks like we can win that game with this particular solution, but not if we do something stupid or make mistakes. Bitcoin enjoyed a brief period of capitalist approval, and still does, even though they try to control it. I've been watching how they did that and their attempts, and I've designed hOEP.coin to be highly agnostic to their known strategies and efforts of capitalist control attempted with Bitcoin. Also, the hOEP project is much more than just a solution to poverty that makes the seller money. I'm using it as a Trojan horse to sneak in a lot more hidden capabilities and solutions that won't be apparent initially. Mostly, I've developed a back end and protocol and functionality of dispute resolutions and such to be forward compatible with a fully developed socialist society that has no concept of property. And also, I've developed the exchange protocols to be fully independent and capable of functioning in the event of a nuclear war or a government collapse or even a complete lack of any government. So if somehow the socialist revolution happens and there's no such thing as property, and there's no such thing as government, and there's no such thing as laws, then the exchange network will still function just fine with a little hiccup and some fine-tuning. I think you should maybe see the slideshow complete and the project onboarding and mission statement, and I think you'll understand better and faster that way. Here's a copy-paste from the public project onboarding document that we share with new contributors to orient them and explain things and get their actionable contributions to the project. The Hours Equals Price project is a completely voluntary, free association project with no money, no censorship, no property, no government, built into its design, development, and core operating protocols and solution strategies. Here's the most relevant quote from our completely public onboarding document at https Google blah blah blah. Thank you for investing your time and attention with the Hours Equals Price project. You are always free to do what you want, but I suggest start with the 1-minute video to make sure you're on the right page and watch a slideshow, 21-page slideshow at Google Forms. Oh, this takes you to the form with the survey about the slideshow. Good. We need to test out a better slideshow that's more persuasive and hopefully shorter for Hours Equals Price.coin. Maybe we need to change the name. Can you take a look at our newer hOEP.coin version 2.0 slideshow, editable version at Google link, and a less bizarre reader response form version 2. And let us know if your next slideshow answered any of the questions that you had after the first alpha version of the slideshow you saw before. Your choice will decide which version to promote first and to the next person who chooses to spend time with our product introduction, presentation, and response form. Will you do this for us as a contribution of your time and for the good of the public with your 30 minutes to 1 hour project for deciding what others should read first when they hear about the hOEP.coin project and help us make a better first impression? Help us rate our slideshow and interview forms by judging the business value, public value, originality, insight, and entertainment value. If you judge well, you can win a prize for best work as judge at URL. M. Bellner wrote back, I would be happy to look at the material, but in the spirit of camaraderie, might you purchase a copy of the Structural Anarchism Manifesto on Amazon? I write back, sorry, I'm destitute, since it's the only immediate way to fight capitalism, and particularly the student loan industry. If you pay your loans, you feed the beast. I refuse to pay the student loans after their predatory, dishonest behavior, and the only way not to pay your student loans in America is to be destitute, so they can't seize your money from your bank accounts because you have none, or take your car because you have no car, etc. Being destitute is the best and maybe only form of passive resistance in American capitalist society. What I'm offering you is free and common property, like socialists prefer. Do you have a YouTube video for it, or a free summary, or even a link to a description for me to consider? Also, I'm not a political scientist. I'm more of an information scientist, so translating all the language in a structural anarchism manifesto into the language of information science and using experience design and user experience design is more of a chore than a benefit. I've studied things like structural anarchism mostly in information science and AI research organizing science, where the terminology and lexicon is familiar to me. I'm a big fan of Noam Chomsky's and have read that sort of thing in the past, so I might give it a read again and see what your take is on it. But at least Noam doesn't make me learn a new language and can communicate in common modern English. I followed the link to blah blah blah, and it's like just repeating stuff I already know with its own branded word definitions instead of the more common word definitions I'm familiar with from organizational management theory and business solutions that do all that in capitalism already. So far, the link is just repeating the concepts that are more advanced and evolved in capitalism for things like holacracy, which is a system of governing business. I understand the holacracy system because it uses standard language from information science, and I can recognize the concepts from holacracy were probably derived from some crude version of linguistically inaccessible communist or socialist material like at the link. So reading the manifesto strikes me like reading old, untranslated Isaac Newton's theory of gravity when I'm working with Einstein's relativity theory already. But send me a link and I'll spend 1 hour looking it over if you spend 1 hour looking over my link. Also, you clearly didn't look at or understand much of what I wrote on the link, because if you did, you wouldn't want me wasting my time on anything other than moving forward with what I'm doing. I've written a viral recipe for a socio-political economic revolution that is going to happen with or without me, and trying to be the first to beat, and I'm trying to be the first to beat the capitalists to the solution and make sure it gets done for human good, not distorted by capitalism for profit. So me slowing down to indulge your proselytizing is not in your best interest. Would you ask Marx to stop work on writing Capital so he could read something written before in French by Aristotle? I kind of feel that's what you're asking of me. I spent over an hour on HTTP World Socialism pamphlet, Socialism Practice Benefits, Chapter 3, and so far all it's told me is what I already wrote down as a functional, ready-to-roll practice on my project equals hours price. So I guess it's kind of nice to read that I have it, nice to read that and have it confirmed again, the need for what I've already built, but I should get back to building it and not bother translating your specifications written down in the link, since they're already built into the system I built. I think it would be better use of everyone's time if you read my material and then adapt yours, or else revise my material as a second version with your language. They're probably largely redundant conceptually anyways, with just different words. M. Bellimer: No. I promised to look at your project and respond effectively and informatively. I am in the midst of responding to a bunch of inquiries and posts on the SPGB site, so my attention is a bit scattered. How about I offer you the manifesto for a free look at, if you want to or not? Give me your email address. Mine is @lear, and I will send it to you. And in return, can you keep me posted on the project? Sounds good. So as you can see, I've spent a lot of research effort on this. My reply: structural anarchism is basically what my project is implementing, as far as I can tell and intended. So it might not be worth reading what you wrote. If you wrote the book, then I think a little bit of time reading on my project will convince you I'm building a solution to the problems you describe. You could actually just save us both time by reading it and pointing out anything that is not consistent with structural anarchism. I doubt you'll find much, if anything, since structural anarchism is, in the information science sense, is kind of how I work. Maybe I'll Google and see if there's a YouTube video on it. Usually that works. When people tell me to buy something, I can just Google it to find it free. P.S. Are you the Structural Manifesto that you're reading? And here's the URL. If that's you, LOL. Love the bloody narrator, but Jesus, go back to English 131 and learn to use the abstraction ladder. You need concrete examples for people to understand your jargon. All your words are so connotation-loaded and complex that they constitute a worldview, and are inaccessible in parts without understanding your complete worldview. Is this you too, right? HTTP Academia Structural Manifesto, though. I read a little bit. Boring book. The videos were amusing, though. Read my project and solve the problem in a few pages, instead of just talking about it in abstract terms for chapters. Although a short little dive into the middle of the text was amusing for reminding me of the writing of Ted Kaczynski and some of his theories. Funny story is, I was invited to join the Freedom Club when I was an engineering major at Colorado University, and where I earned my Erdos number for 2 for publishing abstract math solutions with my professor as an undergrad student. I told his acolyte that little shoebox bombs weren't going to change the course of history or technology, and I wasn't interested in joining his Freedom Club, if that's the best plan they could come up with. The supposed acolyte or Freedom Club member talked with someone, presumably Ted, on the phone, and they decided to let me live, even though they had exposed themselves to me. It seemed they decided, after talking to me a little, that I might solve the problem some other way they couldn't think of or even imagine. Also, I was able to convince them I didn't much believe they were a threat worth reporting to anyone, and I found their attempt mildly amusing and did not much interest me. Anyways, you seem to make some of the same initial premise mistakes as TK, like mistaking the emergent property of humans to seek, acquire knowledge, and exercise that knowledge as a primary biological drive. It's not actually a primary human quality as you expect, and is actually just one expression of the primary imperative to compress data into a more actionable GIST format. And the actual primary driver is more about predicting the future and an innate need to find branch points where the future can be altered easily or informed. Gestalt theory? Anyway, my project isn't really my project since I don't own it anymore, and anyone can freely edit or copy it or whatever with some qualifications. But yeah, I call it my project out of habit and for convenience, so no offense taken, and maybe I'm just confused. My email is steve-whetstone@gmail.com, and my project will change the world quickly, legally, safely, and dramatically. Here's the YouTube intro and playlist at URL. Delete message. Oh, wait. M. Bellamere. No, Ted Kaczynski was out of his mind. No, not the way to go. I am not anti-technology or approve of his methods. I agree with you that they would lead nowhere. I will look at the info you sent me shortly. Good morning, Steve. Nifty little project. I think I see where you are going with this little nifty economic project. Here are a few suggestions, if I've understood it correctly. 1. Your title of the coin project is long and a bit confusing. Simplify something like equal.coin or equals.$sign or equal.tokens, because your project is fundamentally about equality and equalizing value among all participants and citizens. Put the emphasis on equality and people will respond. Also, by moving a bit away from the term coin, you're separating your project from Bitcoin and all the negative politics surrounding Bitcoin. What I found to be the core ideas of the presentation was that value is arbitrary, thus value can be reorganized along more egalitarian lines. This project is advantageous to middle-income people to use because it will lessen financial inequality over time, namely equalize value among the rich and poor. 3. Try to emphasize that equal.coin/tokens is founded on a relational concept of value, namely that value using equal.coin per token or token is based on what an individual is capable to afford for a commodity. That is, a rich person will pay the same ratio of value for a commodity as a poor person will pay the same for the same commodity. So that a rich person's ratio of value paid for the commodity will be equal to the ratio of value paid by the poor person or a middle-income person for the same commodity. By using equal.coin/tokens, all economic participants will be paying for commodities at the same value ratio, but will on the surface be paying different prices based on how wealthy they are. 4. Your voice-over during the presentation is choppy in places. Try to simplify your text, make it more scripted, and make it more direct. Maybe use a better mic system, soft music, a voice enhancer, if you can. I know it took you a lot of time to do, so in general it's pretty good. 5. Simplify your math examples. Unpack them a little more. I found the hairdresser example a good hook for viewers. Try to stick to this singular example. It's mathematically simple, it's easily understood, and it's entertaining. 6. Simplify your questionnaire. Avoid introducing new math examples of equal.coins. It's not important, I think, that people do not understand the math. People must get that this is a more equitable system of economic exchange that generates financial parity between people. The core idea is about producing equality between rich incomes, middle incomes, and poor incomes, not necessarily about understanding the math. All in all, it's a nifty idea. Good job. Keep up the good work. Michelle Luc Bellamare. And Bellamare. Just a quick question pertaining to your little critique concerning an intrinsic insatiable drive in humans to amass the inherently manufacturer ownership knowledge. Your quest to solve global financial inequality via your coin project, is this not driven by your thirst for knowledge, your inherent thirst to own the solution to a socio-scientific problem such as financial inequality? Isn't your economic coin project driven by your will to power, as Nietzsche argues and I argue? Take care, MLB. Smile. This just goes on and on, huh? So looking at the scroll bar, we've got more. I'm going to keep reading this because it's kind of interesting and I want to wrap it up. So, um, okay, where am I? I'm like, not at the end. I'm this one away from the end. One long one and then a short one. All right. Thanks for your time, MLB. I watched your videos and upvoted them. Read some of your manifesto. I would say it's a great manifesto on the evils of capitalism and a reinterpretation of capitalism that argues persuasively for the need for structural anarchism as a solution. What I have created is a much different than a manifesto. I built a solution to the problem you're arguing exists and needs to be solved. The Hours Equals Price project implements socialism or something very much like structural anarchism as a viral business practice in a capitalist economy. But don't tell the people who will come to the project that it's based on socialism or communism or structural anarchism or anything like that, please. It needs to be perceived as coming from capitalism, and it needs to be perceived by capitalism as not part of socialism or structural anarchism, as long as we maintain that illusion in the minds of capitalist leaders. Unlike you, I don't usually bother to argue about what's wrong with capitalism, or why does it feel like I've written this before? Uh, I don't usually bother to argue about what's wrong with capitalism or discuss why others need to favor structural anarchism, because I don't think that's effective at getting results. What I did was create a pricing model that functions in a capitalist economy to make the seller profit of approximately 210 and 10% increase without any significant additional costs. Later, I discovered that as an unintended side effect of this pricing model, also decreases inequality dramatically and quickly and inextricably as part of the pricing solution. While further researching how to implement this profit-motivated sales and marketing strategy for the profit of greedy companies like hOEP, I recognized this created something like socialism and started using SPGB to test out how the solution would affect the economy and how to perfect the protocols for exchange to accommodate the potential government and economic transformation that would result. Based on feedback over the last year on this board and other obscure places where my research would go undetected, I tested out theories and user experience design premises to determine the course of the economic evolution that would likely result over the next 100 years. What you have seen seems to be just the very teeny tip of the ice of the Hours Equals Price project. I assume based on your comment that you watched the YouTube series and stopped there. Presumably based on your feedback, you did not complete any response forms or contribute your comments to the production direction in the reader response forms where it asked for them. That's fine if so, and I don't mean to chastise you, but I am testing the slideshow and presentation sequence at a much deeper level than you would suspect. A couple of things to clarify. First, it is not a little project. My economic projections indicate a market saturation of 50% of GDP in the USA within 3 years. More speculative projections extending out to 100 years and including additional financial technology innovation leads to something I can only describe as an information singularity. This is more of a grand strategy that describes and directs the evolution of the world economy along generational timescales. But that's all pretty hard to grasp at once, and better off if capitalists just get the immediate actionable parts of it immediately. Second, I did not start with the goal of reducing inequality or practicing structural anarchism as a business process. Inequality being reduced globally and locally by mass adoption of the practice is an unintended side effect of the profit-seeking mechanism I was originally interested in and exploring. Development of a structural anarchism business model for crowdsourcing design and development was a result of research into hardening the exchange protocols to function in the event of nuclear war or government collapse and the resulting loss of law and property enforcement that could be expected from a socialist revolution or alternatively a Malthusian trap type population implosion. If you only saw the YouTube version and did a shallow look, then my strategy of obscuring the profit potential and grand scale in favor of immediate rewards for adoption from casual lookers was successful. The full reveal of the profit potential and viral nature of this financial technology innovation is hidden inside requests for contributions for reasons I think you can understand. Details on the grand strategy are not censored or behind paywall, but are instead buried in an information and link maze barrier strategy to hide them from those who should not know or are not ready for the details. If you looked to the project page and started contributing, please don't mention socialism or communism or structural anarchism in your contributions, but otherwise contributions to production is good, and you can copy and paste your comments to me in the project into the project directly. In response to your comments, let's take a break there. In response to your, so now I'm going to talk about what he wrote specifically, equal change of value. I'm just going off on a monologue there, and now I'm going to go back and talk about him and his interests a little more. Funny, others have given me exactly the opposite advice. There's a form and voting mechanism to help decide these things, and project contributors such as yourself are encouraged to take the project slideshow and copy it and make a version with the words they choose and run it in a contest or start their own modified version of the project. 2. Yes, I agree with what you say. I would say more in detail, but if you investigate the project further, you'll read all about the more details to what you conclude in a better format than I can provide here. 3. Yes, people with your worldview generally feel that way and appreciate that appeal and persuasive strategy. I'd like to see you copy this project and focus on people like you from a worldview that would agree with your persuasive strategy. Mostly, I'm focusing on capitalist power brokers in my presentation appeal strategy. The changes you are describing seem pretty likely to make the concept unappealing to capitalists. I want capitalists to swallow this concept and think it tastes great. That probably means making it smell bad and taste bad to people like you. So copy it and make another competing project that smells good and tastes great to socialist structural anarchists? 4. Nope, the YouTube voiceover took very little time, 1 hour, and is a first draft, and also I deliberately chose one of the least persuasive versions of the slideshow in order to delay any unintended premature viral chain reactions. According to the principles of structural anarchism, there's a call for you or anyone else to contribute to the project by revising the voiceover and slideshow along with incentives and reward structures for undertaking the task. You need to read the project page and complete some contribution surveys to find the call to action to improve the YouTube videos. 5. The hairdresser example. LOL. Some people love it, some people don't get it. There's a test question on the reader response form that asks a variation of the hairdresser example to discover if the contributor actually understood the math concepts. If you read the Google Doc project page and go through the steps, you'll see what I'm talking about. 6. No, you've completely misunderstood the project requirements and goals. People don't need to understand anything for this to work. This is adopted by sellers and consumers because it makes them both profit, and that's all they need to understand. This doesn't require economic consciousness to be adopted. hOEP.coin is adopted for reasons of immediate personal private profit and creates economic consciousness gradually as a side effect of repeated usage. People and business don't need to be convinced this will reduce inequality, and most of them would oppose it if they knew that would be the result of repeated or common usage. People and business just need to be greedy and gullible enough not to recognize quickly the changes to society, the economy, politics, and social norms that will result from adopting what they think is a short-term, get-rich-quick marketing strategy. Everything else follows organically along a path I've strategized and developed. What I need is some really smart thinkers like you to follow this path and double-check my reasoning and discover divergent path alternatives at various points that may be advantageous. In regards to your quick questions, yes, you're correct if you want to think of it from that perspective. You and TK are not wrong entirely from a specific worldview perspective, but that's not the perspective and worldview I use because it's insufficiently explanatory for my needs. The will to power, or quest to knowledge, or thirst to own are all different representations of a single base information and gestalt processing operation in the brain that evolved into our species at the very primitive level of single-celled organism and whose functions hasn't changed. I consider concepts such as will to power, quest of knowledge, thirst to own, and curiosity and drive to explore as all just limited expressions of a more fundamental imperative. The important distinction is that not everyone experiences a will to power, and a person will exhibit will to power only in certain environments and situations shape their development in that direction. Likewise, there are people and there are entire cultures and populations with no apparent quest for knowledge, because the more basic drive. There are people without curiosity who have no desire to go where no man has gone before, and these manifestations of a more basic drive are not intrinsic to human nature. They are only manifestations or emergent representations of some people's human nature in our current socio-political environment. The true base representation of the human drive that is expressed as these other derivative drives is a mathematical construct based on Gibbs free energy and best explained by Wikipedia in an article entitled Entropy in Life, and a Wikipedia link to it. Suffice it to say that there is strong reason to suspect these secondary drives, such as will to power and quest for knowledge, etc., seem to present themselves and emerge as behavior patterns only in those situations when and where they are consistent with the information storage efficiency and energy expenditure efficiency predicted by the definition of life as explained by Wikipedia and summarized with this quote from Wikipedia. To Lovelock, the basic question was, what is life and how should it be recognized? When speaking about this issue with some of his colleagues at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, he was asked what he would do to look for life on Mars. To this, Lovelock replied, I'd look for an entropy reduction, since this must be a general characteristic of life. And Bellamere, no disrespect, Steve. Little project was meant to be a term of endearment and encouragement, not a slight. As well, it's a shame that the questionnaire did not record because I roughly spent 30 minutes filling it out. I watched everything that was put on YouTube and followed links you provided. No worries, I will mention your project with structural anarchism as you suggest. I will not mention your project with structural anarchism as you suggest. In return, please do not link structural anarchism or myself with Ted K. I don't think it's a fair comparison, first and foremost, because what TK wrote, is world apart from anything I've written or subscribed to. As you read more on anarchism and Marxism, you will begin to see the huge gulf between genuine leftist social theory and megalomaniac theoretical nonsense. Also, thanks for the links. I'll keep them in mind. All the best in your future endeavors. Cheers, MLB. So, I don't know how long that was, but I spent my time writing that. I spent my time reading that more than once. So did M. Bellamere. And all that time gets added up and counted as contributions and investment credit in the hOEP project. And can be claimed for later credit or use, maybe. I guess. I don't know. We'll see.